I want you to imagine yourself on a hike. The earth crunches beneath your shoes, the sun peeks through the leafy green trees, and bright sunbeams warm up your face. As you make it to the top of the peak, the view is spectacular. Clear skies surround you completely, and you can see everything. Now I want you to imagine if it was all covered in trash. The sad truth is that our earth is deteriorating in front of our eyes. Every day that we fail to effectively manage our trash, the world becomes dirtier and dirtier for us all. The collective people of America do not properly care for their own waste. Our culture is consistently wasteful when it comes to environmental issues of our land. We establish and fill permanent landfills. We fail to recycle effectively, and we rarely ever use composting as a mode of trash management. By doing this, we not only cause waste management problems today, but we also perpetuate them, thus worsening the environmental situation for the next generation. We pollute our land by continuing to create permanent landfills. Some of the wastes in these landfills will sit for hundreds and thousands of years, and some of these products, like styrofoam, will never decompose. Yet the trash continues to pour into these landfills in startling numbers. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, each person in the United States creates 4.4 pounds of trash per day. When you do the math, Americans produce hundreds of millions of tons of garbage. In 2001 alone, the EPA records that the U.S. produced over 229 million tons of garbage. Another study done at Oberlin College in Ohio says that the average American will throw away over 600 times their own body weight. So just one 150-pound man would leave behind almost 90,000 pounds of trash. What happens when space runs out in these landfills? What will we do? To prove that Americans do not know how to properly minimize their waste, look at recycling. If you live in the dorms, you all have the little blue recycling bins in your room. If you commute, then you probably have the bigger ones at home. We all know what can be recycled: paper, plastic, glass. But did you know that recyclables reach beyond what gets put in those little blue bins? Less common things like cell phones, batteries, computers, eyeglasses, smoke detectors, and fluorescent light bulbs can also be recycled. They may not be as convenient to recycle as throwing a water bottle in a little blue bin, but nevertheless it's important to recycle them too. Oberlin College in Ohio did another research study on this subject and found that if the American public recycled just one out of every 10 water bottles that we consume, we would save 200 million pounds of plastic from ending up in a landfill. If we recycled all the steel and tin cans, like the soup cans, we could supply enough steel to sustain the American auto industry. To throw more Oberlin statistics at you, under 70% of newspaper is actually recycled, and under 48% of office paper is. These reasons allow me to confidently say that the American people are not recycling efficiently, thus mismanaging their waste. Another area in which America mismanages their waste is composting. Composting is the process of putting food or gardening waste in a composter bin and letting them biodegrade naturally. Well, can't trash naturally decompose in a landfill? Studies at Duke University suggest that the decomposition does take place in landfills, but because of the massive amount of trash, it gets piled on top of each other and no oxygen gets to it. So when it does decompose, it decomposes anaerobically, which means that it takes a lot longer and it produces greenhouse gases. Remember the fact that said that each person produces 4.4 pounds of trash per day? Well, the same agency, the EPA, also said that half of that trash could have been composted. That frees up so much space in landfills. Half of it, if you reduce it by 50%, it's a lot. So imagine if we reduce it, that's a lot of space. The sad truth is that very few people actually know how to compost, and even fewer actually do compost. The EPA states that 300 million tons of food wasted each year. Only 2% is composted? This example makes it painfully clear that Americans do not properly manage the way they take out the trash. Our world is beautiful. It's filled with oceans and forests and lots of clean, crisp air. And it is our collective responsibility as Americans to preserve the earth we call home. We only get one planet, and I would like to see it not covered in trash.
All right. You've got a basic claim in the introduction, 3 different places, and it's not, I mean, they're all basically saying the same thing. I'm not sure which one you want to count as your proposition. You should highlight that, and even though you're saying the same thing in 3 different ways, it should be a single explicit statement, so it's clear. I thought you did set up a structure for the audience to follow, although you didn't use any numerical signposting on it, so casual listeners may not be able to follow it as clearly as somebody who's listening more intently. And you kind of have to assume that not everybody in your audience is going to be as focused as you, especially in an evening like this. This is a perfect example of a discussion audience. People's attention wander, and you sometimes have to drag them back to those issues a little bit more forcefully. I think that there is some information, some presuppositions that are being made that need a little bit more development. You suggest, for instance, that there's a limitation on the amount of space that we have available, and at one point you talked about how composting isn't being done, and that although it would ultimately occur in waste sites, landfills, that it takes too long and it produces greenhouse gases. Well, is there a reason that the time limit matters, or the time factor is important? And the greenhouse gases, how significant are they? Are they something that we'd have to worry about? If they're relatively insignificant, what's the need to rush this composting in the waste management systems? I thought you had a lot of information that you're presenting about what potential savings are and how much waste that we're generating. I'm just not sure that you've demonstrated that the amounts of waste that you are talking about have any impact on the environment or the appearance of the planet. You know, it certainly sounds like a lot of waste per person, but if we have space for putting it someplace, if it's being managed, then we don't have a problem, and that's where you need a little bit more evidence. You're also a little dependent on all the information from the one source, and I think you want to look for a little bit more diversity there. I thought the presentation was very fluid and nicely delivered, and I thought you had a good exit line for the presentation as well. Thank you.